Hello, 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 my friends. Caitlin here, and what are your assumptions about me? So this is a tag going around on YouTube where you get people to tell you the assumptions that they hold or have held about you, and then you address them, aka talk about whether they're true or not and all that jazz. And you guys were super helpful and sent me some of your assumptions, so here we go. Colorful. This is quite true. I think I am as colorful as a person can be, although I picked out this shirt because it was like pale pink and I thought it would go good with my background, and then I realized that it kind of looked like I wasn't wearing a shirt, so it doesn't always work out that I'm colorful. I got 2 from @bunny with a bunch of underscores, 1 being you like cats, LOL, and 2, you are rich and single. Yes. Yes, I do. How could you tell? But as far as being rich and single, that is not true. I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of the world, I probably seem rich, but in America, I'm pretty solidly middle class. And I'm not single. I was single, but I do have a boyfriend now. And Finn doesn't want to be involved anymore. That you try to be friendly and outgoing, but are actually very shy. Yes, this is actually quite true, especially if you watch my videos, because I think if you see my videos, then you're like, oh, she seems like a super friendly, outgoing person, and a lot of people think that I'm an extrovert, when in fact, I am an introvert, and I am quite shy, and I'm only really like overly talkative and friendly and outgoing with people that I have become really good friends with. For my friend Alana, she said, I assumed you'd be a good friend in that creative writing class, and I was right. Also true. You've probably heard that story if you watched the video from last year where Alana and I did a best friend tag, because we met in a creative writing class in college and we both like looked at each other and thought that we would be like nice people and wanted to be friends with each other. And it took like a whole year and having another class together, but we eventually were friends. That you were a super high maintenance girly girl. I like the past tense in this because it's making me assume that this is what you thought maybe upon first watching my videos, but then maybe figured out that that's not entirely true. I am probably a high maintenance person, but not necessarily in the way that one might think. If nothing else, just because of the kind of chronic illness that I deal with, because I need a certain amount of sleep and I have to have a certain kind of diet in order to function properly. So there's just, you know, I have to have certain things in order to work well and not be like a hangry, grumpy mess. Veronica Angelin says, you are very neat and tidy. Yes, this is very true. I come from a household where tidiness was very important growing up, and so it is still very important to me. Although I guess I'm not probably as organized or tidy as, say, I was when I was like a teenager, just because you grow up and life gets more chaotic. Victoria Lester says, you have a fear of spiders? Yes, not an irrational fear. I probably have a bigger fear of snakes than I do of spiders though, just because you can usually easily step on a spider and kill it if it's like really freaking you out, but snakes are a little bit harder to deal with. You're both an intersectional feminist and have a sassy personality. Also true, but I will say that I am in no way a perfect person, but I certainly value intersectionality in my feminism, and I'm always trying to learn and see where, you know, my own biases come in. And I do think I have a sassy personality. I think a lot of times when people meet me for the first time, they would not see that or expect that. Because I am quite shy, but once you get to know me, I am very sassy. I assume that you're very socially competent and also do voice acting. I'm interested in why you say voice acting, because that is true, specifically for commercials, although I do not consider myself very socially competent. I guess I could seem like I am because I'm very good at knowing what you're supposed to do so I can give advice on it, but actually performing it in like the real world is a lot harder for me. From @Lauren Tookie, I assume that you hate eggs. This is so funny. Did I make a video where I talked about hating eggs? So I don't hate eggs. Sometimes I actually even crave eggs, but eggs tend to make me sick, so I'm kind of anti-egg, I guess you could say. Like yesterday I had an egg sandwich for breakfast, but that's like the first egg I've had in like 2 months, maybe. You are always so uplifting. I feel like this is maybe more of an observation than an assumption, but I really appreciate it because I certainly attempt to be uplifting. Although if the assumption is that I am always uplifting in like my real life, that's actually not really true. I can be a pretty pessimistic person. which is sort of embarrassing to say considering the kind of persona that I try to have on YouTube. So for this last one, I actually asked my boyfriend what some of his assumptions were about me when he first met me, because we met when we were 14 and 15 back in high school. So he said, back in the day, I assumed you maybe thought you were smarter than everyone, and that comes off like you were thinking you were better. But to be honest, I took it as confidence and it made me like you more. So that one's really interesting to me because that's what I always feared people were thinking about me, because I am a shy person and I tend to put up this wall in order to protect myself. And I was afraid that that wall would come off as like overconfidence or thinking that I was better than people, when in fact, I was just afraid that I was like this horrible, unlovable person. Woo, okay, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Now, to why I really wanted to make this video. One of my biggest and most constant fears is of what other people are thinking about me. I know this is irrational and it's totally something that I address with my therapist a lot, but if I'm being really honest, a lot of my social anxiety and shyness comes from fearing that other people are thinking that I am weird or ugly or fat or in some way an undesirable person to be around. So I try to fit myself into these particular boxes that I've deemed to be safe, but then have a hard time emotionally because I don't feel like I can really be me. In fact, a lot of the time I struggle to even know who the real me is because I've put so much pressure on myself over the years trying to be something that I felt like people would accept. But what I really took away from this tag is that one, people who don't know you are going to make all kinds of judgments about you no matter what. That's just the way humans are. And two, just because someone makes an assumption about you doesn't mean that it's true. They're working with limited information and their own biases, which are going to color their interpretations. I'm honestly really surprised as to how nice you guys were with your assumptions, because I was totally waiting for the "you're a hoe" or "you're fat and lazy" or "you're dumb" comments to come in, and that's why I considered not even making this video and participating in the tag. Because to open yourself up and ask for assumptions is like, well, opening a can of worms or Pandora's box. Chaos. So I guess thanks for being really great subscribers and friends. But also I hope this is a great lesson if you're like me and worry about people judging you, because it kind of shows just how useless that fear really is. Because if you just try to be your authentic self, then maybe the people who really matter will take note and see the true you too. Thanks again to everyone who submitted their assumptions. If you didn't get to, then go ahead and leave some of your assumptions about me down in the comments and whether they've changed with time, and I'll try to answer everybody down there too. And as always, remember that you can check me out on these other social media sites, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know the moment there's a new video. And I'll see you guys next Thursday. Bye!